Everybody, thanks so much for joining us for this session. We're very excited to get to speak with you all. My name is Anne-Marie Woodburn, and I am the manager of our Security Partner Marketing team for Global ISV, and I'm going to hand it over to James.
Morning, everyone. My name is James Kang. I work with our security partners in the AWS Marketplace. But excited to talk to you today about security partners and maximizing visibility and how to accelerate growth. This is the agenda for today. We'll be covering off on a few best practices as well as how AWS partners are really succeeding in partnering with the AWS Partner Network. We'll give a few examples of what good looks like, as well as go through some specific playbooks when it comes to co-marketing as well as co-selling. The first question that I always get asked is why AWS? And as many of you know, AWS is the cloud leader when it comes to market share. We have over 1 million customers and tens of billions of dollars in committed spend on an annual basis. According to a recent State of the Cloud report, about 37% of AWS customers have what we call an enterprise discount program. In other words, this is like a prepaid debit card for AWS, where our customers are saying to AWS that over the next 3 to 6 years, they're going to be spending X amount of dollars, typically in the millions to hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. This helps us in a number of ways, including leveraging AWS Marketplace, which we'll talk about shortly. The other thing in which I would be remiss not to note, being here at AWS Inforce, is the value of security within the AWS ecosystem. Security currently ranks as the #1 category within AWS Marketplace by total contract value or revenue. Similarly, as we all know, security has been resilient to a lot of the economic downturn as well as the pressures. It currently ranks as the top concern as well as request from customers when it comes to cloud challenges. Let me spend a few minutes talking about the APN, or the AWS Partner Network. The APN is meant to provide our partners tools to help scale the business from both a technical, marketing, as well as co-sell lens. Whether you're just starting or you're an extremely mature partner like our Diamond partners this week, there's considerable value in terms of partnering with the APN. We typically like to ask partners to leverage a lot of the partner network as well as the resources and tools that we have at our disposal. We offer different types of funding as well as ways in which we can innovate through sandbox credits. Similarly, we have extremely broad customer reach. If you think about AWS, we are viewed typically as the trusted advisor to our end customers. Hence, we have a very deep bench of subject matter experts that are able to help and assist with any sort of questions, as well as provide intelligible insights as to how folks are modernizing their cloud journeys. Ultimately, we also provide some unique differentiators for your business. We offer things like the foundational technical review, as well as competencies like the security competency to help differentiate your security solution as it's built on AWS. Lastly, we also like to save our partners time and money, which is something that I know everyone in the audience here is invested in and interested to hear. We'll go into a couple other extremely interesting and relevant examples, but as you've noted, and you can get your team as well as folks within your organization trained on AWS, it's a win-win scenario for both the partner as well as the end customer. At AWS, we've also developed what we call the Partner Profitability Framework. Outside of the graphical design, what you'll also notice is the fact that we've segmented our approach into different mechanisms and metrics. A key thing that we like to tell customers is the fact that we like to focus on business outcomes, and that's the primary driver for how we think about profitability for our partner community. Because you are built on AWS, we win when you win. Ultimately, we asked our customers about what they care about, and when it comes down to it, we found two really interesting observations. First, 69% of revenue is actually generated on the front end of the customer spend cycle. And similarly, 79% of partners reported that when customers bought from them through AWS Marketplace, their cloud spend actually increased on years 2 and following. We like to break out the go-to-market motion, as you can see, into multiple different categories. I'll be speaking about co-sell in a minute, But one of the most fundamental layers to developing the Amazon flywheel is that of co-marketing and increasing your visibility with AWS. And to speak about marketing, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Emery.
Thanks, James. So how do you market with AWS? We get this question a lot. And I like this slide because it makes it very simple on where to focus. So number one, go to market with confidence. Build a joint marketing plan as a company, integrating AWS into your plan. Work with your alliance team to help build that plan. Lean into programs that we offer, and I'll talk about a lot of those programs here in a minute, as well as if you have MDF, spend it, and tell us how you spend it, and if it worked or didn't work, because we love to hear success stories and learning from those as we go through it. Number two is build awareness. So use the AWS logo, right, if you have approval to. Lean into our security messaging guidelines that we have, as well as our branding guidelines, so we know that we're going to market together with that same joint message to build that awareness together. Three is generate demand. So you've got this great marketing plan. It will generate demand. Make sure you're showing us, right? Put it into ACE if you have access to ACE so we can see what you are doing. We love to see our partners grow, and that is a great way for us to say, hey, look, this partner did this last year, and look what they're doing this year. This is amazing, right? What are they doing that's so great? And four, engage with AWS sales. Listen to James's best practices today. Take a lot of that with you. All of this together is a great recipe for success. So being in marketing, I get people asking me all the time, what does a great joint marketing plan look like? There is not one answer to this question. My only answer I have is to build a marketing plan that's a full funnel, right? Think of everything. It's not one activity, it's a lot of activities together. So my next slide is an example of the funnel, right? I know a lot of marketers, probably sales folk, business development, have seen the funnel, but think about the top of the funnel, through the middle, down to the bottom. Work backwards from your customer. Like, how do they go through your sales cycle? When did they become a customer? And think how that works. Try not to do one-off activities, and if you do, what's the next step that will bring them further into the funnel? Think about the whole model as you build out that joint marketing plan and how it maps to this. So my next slide, I really love this slide. And I borrowed this from our Marketplace team, but it shows you the effectiveness of content, right? So as you're building out your plan, think, okay, how effective is this gonna be in what I am building and what it's gonna drive to? My favorite thing to call out on this page are blog posts. It is amazing how powerful blog posts are. They live forever, and clearly it's got a 72% awareness here. So like, make sure blogs are part of your plan, right? So take pictures of this, save it. It is an awesome slide. So with that, and how to build a plan is, how do you jointly market with our security messaging to go to market? And these are our 5 use cases we focus on for 2024. Our team heavily aligns with product marketing, and we teach that to our partners to make sure they know what they are focusing on, and then we have the same message driving to our joint customers. So we work backwards from those customers, and this is how they pick the 5. They see that customers are leaning towards these, their business needs these, so that is why these 5 are priority for us. Not shocking, right? Generative AI is number 1. These are our 3 use cases that we focus on here. So securing generative AI, securing against, and then developing a generative AI security solution as well. Number 2 is proactive security. So help customers build mechanisms to scale and to embed security in their business. 3 is provable security. We don't have a ton of partners in this space, but it's definitely a growing space for our partners. So it's the mathematical logic to answer critical questions about customers' infrastructure and detect those misconfigurations. 4, zero trust. I think a lot of partners play in this space, but help your customers build that strong framework to make sure they have the security guardrails in place to connect from anywhere, ransomware, etc. And then 5 is digital sovereignty. We focus heavily on APJ and EMEA for this, but the focus here is, the cloud needs to realize its full potential with some guardrails, making sure that there is some set rules in place on how that is going to be used and how it is going to be secured as well. So with all these use cases and working with product marketing and our team, we build scalable campaigns for partners to actually take advantage of. So I'm going to show y'all what some of these are. But if you are a partner, you have access to Partner Central, which then you have access to Marketing Central. And every asset that our team creates, we put on Partner Marketing Central for partners to take a part of. And we call them Partner Ready campaigns, if you haven't heard of these, or PRCs. So go check them out. Our newest one that just launched is generative AI for security. And these campaigns have everything from the email to write to the ebook. It has our AWS messaging and then a placeholder for the partner messaging to go. It has solution briefs, anything you can think of, social posts. So check it out. Go search for what term you're looking for. We have several in there for security. And if there's one that you're like, hey, I need this, we want to hear it. We want to know. Like, we're focusing on those 5 this year. But if there's something that you're like, we see a growing case here, we'd love to hear it. So lean into this. AWS focuses on differentiating themselves. And how we do that is with partners. So if we have joint messaging and we're going to market together and leveraging these resources and the information we put out, we'll only be stronger. So now I'm going to hand it over to James as we talked about the flywheel, right? We've got the co-market, and now he's going to dive further into co-sell.
Thanks, Emery. As we spoke about, AWS is built on the foundation of being the trusted advisor for our end customers. We've really built a machine and a mechanism in which we've eclipsed recently $100 billion in annual recurring revenue. Why does this matter for you as the partner? Well, first and foremost, customers come to us and ask us for advice in terms of which ISVs or third-party solutions to buy. Ultimately, our job as AWS is to focus on customer needs, as customer obsession is our absolute number one priority. When it comes to incentivizing our field, there are a number of different incentives in which we provide to AWS field sellers to sell with our top strategic ISV security partners. First, we offer cash spiffs. Second, we help them retire their sales quota. And third, we also allow them to draw down on what we call the EDP, or the prepaid debit card, by transacting the deal on AWS Marketplace. When we polled our AWS sellers back in 2022, we found a couple interesting insights. The one that resonated the most with our larger AWS partner community is the demand and the interest in wanting to generate joint pipeline. This came up in about 22% of all the survey respondents. In addition, I would advise everyone here to be practical and be very prescriptive in terms of how you want to co-sell with AWS. Out of all the various motions here, I'd summarize it into one very succinct example. If you want to sell with AWS, you need to address the context for the request, as well as the very specific ask for the AWS seller. I'll give you an example. Rather than going to AWS and saying, hey, I want to speak to John Smith, the CTO of company ABC, you should much rather preface that ask to AWS by saying, hey, my company has been in conversations with John Smith for the last 90 days. We've had 3 different conversations. I'd love to understand what are the different priorities in their cloud modernization strategy with AWS. Can you help me get connected to their IT team? And my guidance to you is that you probably get a response 8 out of 10 times with that specific request, whereas you probably get a response 1 out of 10 times with the former request. Andy Jassy famously quoted that the democratization of technology has fundamentally changed the way that businesses operate. He was alluding to the fact that AWS continues to push boundaries when it comes to innovating at scale. One of those innovations is AWS Marketplace. AWS Marketplace, as many folks know, is a digital catalog in which ISVs as well as system integrators can list products as well as solutions. Back last year, we asked Forrester Consulting to do a survey, and ultimately they came out with the total economic impact study. Many of you are likely familiar with this. If you're not, please take a look at the download link and take a look at the statistics for yourself. We surveyed 70 global ISVs to get their input in terms of why they sell with AWS, specifically on AWS Marketplace, and the findings were astonishing. First, richer deal sizes. Customers spend 80% more when transacting on AWS Marketplace. And it goes back to one of the fundamental concepts that we discussed before in terms of being able to draw down on your prepaid debit card or your EDP. Secondly, we saw higher win rates, going from 22% to 28%. This increase was followed up by the fact that we also saw shortened review cycles from 5 months typically to an average of about 3. And a lot of this is because of standard end user license agreements that we have pre-built within AWS Marketplace, as well as templatized statements of work. Finally, as many of you have probably asked and are interested in, we do also help to generate an increased pipeline. So as partners come to us and share their opportunity pipeline, we at AWS typically do also support by providing about 20% of a partner's joint pipeline in the future years. Finally, I'll end with a few examples and best practices in terms of what good looks like. A lot of folks come up to me and ask, hey, I'm just starting off in my cloud journey. I'd love to see examples of partners that have really gotten it right. And again, I would point to a lot of our diamond sponsors for AWS: Inforce, CrowdStrike, Palo Alto Networks, Datadog. They've been able to scale incredibly over the past decade and are examples of partners that have really leaned into the AWS flywheel. A lot of customers will ask, hey, is there one or two specific things that I can do? We've listed out 4 very specific anecdotes. I'd say the first is strategic customer wins. Our top strategic and I'll call sales or security ISVs back in 2023 eclipsed over 1,000 joint customer wins with AWS. This seems like a stretch, but if you think about the magnitude in which we are continuing to go to market with our top strategic ISVs, we're focused on verticalized sales plays as well as very specific territories, and we're able to unlock conversations which might not be clearly apparent in kind of previous conversations. The key to this and unlocking the growth is really having a very, very well-defined better together story. So what I would encourage you to do is work with your AWS counterpart to understand why does 1 + 1 = 3. Secondly, I'd focus on ACE pipeline. And more than ACE pipeline, it's really ACE hygiene. Make sure that opportunities are correctly staged, whether it's earlier in the sales cycle or later in the stage cycle. Be specific in terms of what the ask is to your AWS counterpart and field seller. What do you need them to help you with when you're co-selling to the end customer account? Similarly, we talk about AWS Marketplace. AWS Marketplace, as we've talked about, has become the gold standard for how we try to go to market with our top ISVs. I talked to a top global ISV alliance lead a few weeks back, and one interesting finding that he shared with me was that for 2023, 90% of his President's Club members transacted at least 2 deals with AWS Marketplace, and at least 1 deal was over $100,000. With these small indicators, you get a sense for the gravity as well as the momentum that AWS Marketplace is beginning to scale within our larger partner community. Finally, and I should have probably started with it, but executive alignment is key. Everything comes from being interlocked from the top down, and you need your leadership from the C-level suite on down to understand the value of partnering with AWS. It comes from building that trust over time, and ultimately we are here to help be your guides when you step into the AWS Partner Network. With that, we want to thank everyone here for your time. We thank you for joining us for this session. Anne-Marie and I will be around to field any questions. And please do take some time to scan the QR code, review the links, as well as to complete the survey for the lightning session.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.